welcome to Quilting with Dawn, Taming Mount Scrapmore Part 2. I didn't realize I was going to do this next video until I saw Carolyn working on another scrap quilt. She has so many scraps that she's making another quilt. The one you see behind me is one of the older scrap quilts, which I'll show you in a bit. But let's move on now to the one she's working on today. Here is Carolyn's Mount Scrapmore quilt, in other words, a scrap quilt that you saw in the last video. It's been quilted. So you can see here the backing she chose. It's a nice blue colored backing, actually probably more like purple. And I'll show you, coming in here, the pattern she used. She broke up the very boxy rectangular fabric patches with more of a swirly feathery pattern you can see here. So it's pretty cool. It took her all day yesterday to quilt this, even though it's an automated machine. It takes care and feeding. It was 9 zones and she got it done. 33,000 stitches per zone, 9 zones. So you can just imagine how much thread that used. All right, this next Carolyn's Scraps Adventure. There goes Carolyn. You can see that she's got a center area that's mostly purples, and then she's doing the outlying area with greens. So same overall pattern as before, but different. I know Carolyn tells me the inner band around the purple is going to be purple, and then the outer band around the green is going to be, wait for it, green. This is where Carolyn is at with her current scrap quilt. And now, as we speak, she's working on the next ring of 3-inch squares. Well, 3.5 inches that are sewn to 3. And they're of a blue theme. So we got purple, green, then blue, and Carolyn tells me there's going to be a blue border all the way around. This is more or less the same pattern as the last scrap quilt that she did, but there's more. The center is smaller. Therefore, when the quilt is finished, the overall size is probably going to be about the same. So it's a work in progress. What I'm going to show you now are some more scrap quilts, because Carolyn reminded me when she saw the last video, she goes, hey, I've got more scrap quilts than that. So I'll show you some more. So now this is another scrap quilt that Carolyn has done before. She did this one last time we were living in Europe. What's cool about it, and I'll zoom in on the details in a bit, is that not only is it made from scraps, and it comes up fabulous, but she actually patterned each of the blocks for the quilting part and sewed it with her regular sewing machine. Didn't use a long arm. So I'll show you in a bit how they came out. But let's talk about the scraps first. Each of these scrap blocks is, Carolyn calls it a quarter log cabin. So what, if you know with a log cabin, you keep building strips around into a square. Well, here, you see on point, what she did is each strip was one on top of the other, so it goes left, right, left, right, left, right, like that. And it builds from a small little corner up to this larger strips. None of these strips are uniform in size. So you'll see that some of them are 1/4 inch, some of them are 1/2 inch, some of them are 1 inch. Maybe not 1/4 inch is too thin. But they're multiple sizes, multiple colors. So here, let's now zoom in on this puppy. You can see, right, how it just goes right, left, right, left, right. So you see how the strips build up. But check this out. This is what she did using her sewing machine. She drew out this pattern by hand and then sewed it with her regular sewing machine. Free motion, if you will, on the sewing machine. I don't know if she had to use a special foot for that, but she got it done. And as I zoom out, you'll see how the quilt looks in its entirety. Isn't that cool? But wait, there's more scrap quilts. She did these ones after we moved here to the new space. Let's say about 4 years ago. And again, she was on a roll, so she did 3 quilt tops with the same overall design. And you can see here, triangles, equilateral triangles, made from strips of scrap fabric. And so you'll see the equilateral strip triangles, and you see a filler triangle of the gray. So this is the purple and gray, the other one's green and white, right? And each triangle, equilateral triangle, has a height of 6.5 inches, and when it's 6 inches, and when it's sewn, it goes down to 5.5 inches. So again, zooming in here on the details, you can see how the triangles come out. And look at the quilty. She's actually quilted this with a long arm machine. Love this pattern on this one. It's one of her faves. It's got this wavy, flowing pattern. Isn't that wonderful? And as I move here to the other one, you can see a different type of wave. It's more of a staggered, but even wave. It worked too, so she's experimenting with waves. But you can see each of these triangles, and you get the effect, right? So that's pretty cool. But wait, there's more. Another triangle-based scrap quilt. And I'll zoom in on it. What's unique about this one, not only the colors choice, so you see reds and golds, but is the actual quilting Carolyn did on it. So I'll show you. Let me show you something. This, Carolyn used the long arm machine, but what she did use was a wide base plate on where the needle goes, and then a ruler. So she actually came up with a design and used the ruler and the long arm machine to do these straight edges. And she filled each of these triangles in with straight lines, but it came out really good. And there's more, as you probably expected. And you're probably looking at this and you say, hey, that doesn't look like a scrap quilt. It looks like a Bargello quilt. Well, it is, and you're right. But she made it from scraps. Apparently, she had a lot of binding scraps. You know, when you make a binding, you cut your 2 or 2.5 inch strips of fabric. She had a lot of leftovers from all the quilts she's done. So she then took those binding strips and jelly rolled them, or did it like a jelly roll race quilt. Google that, jelly roll race for a quilt. You just keep sewing these strips together and you come up with bars, and then you cut in the other direction and turn it into a Bargello by staggering them. There's actually Quilting with Dawn where we look up Quilting with Dawn, jazz up jelly roll. We did something like this, but this is better. She did a really good job on this. So that's it. And then she added borders and things to make it a more of a usable size. But isn't this cool? It's a Bargello scrap quilt. And I'll zoom in a sec here. It doesn't show up as well here, but it's bubbles. She used the long arm machine, an automated pattern, a stretch pattern, that turned these little circles all throughout it, bubbles, to nicely contrast the horizontal and vertical lines of the seams of the colors. So it came out all right. In fact, if I turn it around, you can see, look at the backing, what she did. More bubbles. She used the polka dots on the back, so that goes very nicely with the pattern. Isn't that cool? Carolyn has finished this latest scrap quilt top. So I'm going to stand back here in a bit, and you'll be able to see the color choices and design she used. Here we go. So, yeah, hopefully I'm back far enough here. You should be seeing the purple center with a purple band, the next checkered green squares with a green band, a blue checkered section with a blue band, and finally, to give it some color relief, if you will, she went with a black and white-ish surrounding checker with a black border. That's pretty cool, eh? So Carolyn did the math for me this morning, and 450 squares-ish are in this, plus, of course, the borders. Oh, there's a little thread here. Yeah, so you can see this is more or less the same design as the last scrap quilt, but different. Different colors, different colorways. And she changed it up a bit, but going from a very much vibrant coloring to something more somber on the edge to give it that relief around the outside. Also going to be roughly bedspread sized, which is good. She just finished yesterday, so I think it was in total about a week and a half worth of sewing and puttering on it. And she's a fast sewer, so she whipped it together. So that's one more scrap, and this will bring to a close, if you will, the Scrapmore pile. I asked Carolyn, did you reduce Mount Scrapmore, or did you make it go away? She said, no, it somehow got bigger. So I'm not exactly sure how that happens, but it does tell me that scrap piles never go away. You'll always have scraps available for doing something like this, which is pretty cool. What I'm going to close off is I have decided my next quilting project. And I'm not going to give it a year because I'm energized now. I want to start this. I like bright colors. You may have noticed I have a closet full of Hawaiian shirts. There's a story there for another time. I'm going to do a Bargello quilt. I love the colors and the three-dimensional effect you can get with Bargello quilts. And let me show you something.
While Carol and I were out and about recently, in fact, I did a piping gig with her pipe band in Paulsbo, Washington State. And Carolyn had this book with her because, you know, she was keeping herself entertained while we were driving along. And it's filled with Bargello ideas. I'll show it on the screen what the book is, but it's from a lady named Eileen Wright. And this particular one, but there's 2 books at least in the series. This is called Twist and Turn Bargello Quilts. And I also show you, I mean, you won't be able to see it until I blow it up for you. But it's got neat ideas for Bargellos. And I love the color selections and the designs this lady has. Do give it that 3-dimensional effect that I so enjoyed with the Vista boxes. Another neat bit of trivia is that this lady actually lives on Vancouver Island. Carolyn met her and had her sign that book. So we do have local celebrities on our island. Cool. So anyway, so stay tuned. My next thing I will do is start thinking about the colors I'm going to choose and the design I'm going to choose for my next project, which will be a Bargello quilt. Hope you enjoyed Taming Mount Scrapmore Episode 2. And stay tuned for the next one.